I planted a tracker on my husband's car to find his mistress. The blinking dot led me to a secret warehouse, and when I broke in, I found his life's work pinned to the walls. It was a shrine to every secret I'd ever buried. My face, under 3 different names. He wasn't having an affair. He was conducting an investigation, and I was his prime target. The real question wasn't who he was seeing. It was which one of us was the liar. My name is Hana, and the blinking light you see reflected in my eye, that was the tiny, magnetic heart of the tracker I had just planted on my own husband's car. I was hunting the man I loved, and the hunt was about to lead me to a truth so terrifying, it would make an affair feel like a blessing. To understand the story, let me give you a quick background and remind you to subscribe if you like interesting stories like this. For 3 years, I was Hana Lee, wife of Kijung. He was 25 years my senior, a titan of the import-export world, a man whose calm, steady presence promised a sanctuary from the storm of my past. Our apartment in Seoul was a glass and steel nest in the sky. I was the perfect, doting wife. I arranged the orchids, I mastered his mother's recipes, I hosted his business dinners with a gentle, unassuming smile that never reached the part of me I kept locked away. I buried the woman I used to be so deep, I almost believed she was dead. But peace, dear friend, is a fragile vase perched on a narrow ledge, and my life was built on a foundation of earthquakes. The first crack appeared with the phone calls. Kijung would take them on the balcony, his back to me, his voice a low, urgent murmur in the night. It wasn't the cadence of business. It was the rhythm of a secret. Then came the locked drawer in his antique Joseon-era desk, a drawer that required a key he never carried, a drawer that hummed with a silence that felt like a scream. And the smells. He'd come home from his late meetings, smelling not of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey, but of cold, clean night air and the faint, metallic tang of printer ink. It was an odd, sterile scent that clung to his coats, so unlike the warm, human scent of a lover's perfume. My friends, my own mother, they whispered the obvious. He's a powerful man, Hana. A younger wife at home, it's a cliché. He's having an affair. But the woman I had buried, the ghost inside me, stirred in her grave. My instincts, honed in a different life, screamed a different warning. This wasn't passion. This was operational. This was clandestine. He wasn't hiding a woman. He was hiding a project. So I did what any woman with my particular history would do. I didn't buy a tracker. I built one. From a burner phone, a miniature power bank, and a military-grade GPS chip I'd kept sealed in a Faraday bag in a safety deposit box under a name that wasn't mine. I encased it in black, shock-absorbent rubber, made it magnetic, and rendered it utterly, completely silent. The day I planted it, a soft, insistent rain was falling, washing the city in shades of gray. I told Kijung I was going to the florist. I watched his black Genesis sedan disappear around the corner, its red taillights smearing in the wet. My heart wasn't pounding with the panic of a jealous wife. It was beating the steady, cold rhythm of a field operative. The hunter was stepping back into her skin. I knelt on the cold, wet pavement, the rain soaking through my designer trousers. The hum of the city was a distant murmur. My hands, which could arrange 1,000 delicate blossoms, did not tremble as I reached up, deep into the shadowy wheel well of my husband's car. I found a strut, a piece of cold, unforgiving metal. I pressed the device against it. Click, a soft, final sound that sealed the fate of our marriage. For a week, the data was a study in mundane married life. Office, home, the golf club, the country club. A flicker of doubt, of sheer foolishness, pricked at me. Had I imagined it all? Had the ghosts of my past made me paranoid? Then, on a Friday, the dot moved. It was 8:17 p.m. Kijung had kissed my forehead, said he had a late conference call with Singapore. The dot on my screen didn't go to his office. It traveled across the Han River to a nondescript, forgotten industrial park on the city's outskirts. It stopped at a unit labeled 7B, a warehouse. My heart didn't break. It turned to ice. This was no romantic rendezvous. This was a dead drop, a secure location. My mind, the mind I had forced to be quiet for 3 years, snapped back to life with a terrifying clarity. Threat assessment, entry points, escape routes. The next afternoon, while Kijung was at his weekly golf game, I went to Unit 7B. The rain had returned. a fine mist that clung to my dark coat. The lock on the roll-up door was a simple, sturdy pin-and-tumbler, a laughably simple barrier for someone with my training. I had my picks out and the lock disengaged in under 10 seconds. The door, heavy and groaning, slid up just enough for me to slip inside. The air that hit me was stale, cool, and smelled of dust and ozone. I expected to see crates of contraband, stacked currency, perhaps even weapons. What I saw stole the very breath from my lungs and the warmth from my soul. The warehouse was a cathedral of secrets. 3 entire walls were a sprawling, terrifying mosaic of photographs, maps, and strings of red yarn connecting them in a complex, insane web. And in the center of it all, illuminated by a single, hanging work light, was a large, grainy, black-and-white surveillance photograph. It was a woman. Her face was half hidden by a hood, but the angle caught her profile, the sharp, determined set of her jaw, the intense focus in her eyes. The woman was me. But it wasn't Hana, the wife. It was Song Jae-won. The name was printed beneath the photo in bold, block letters. Song Jae-won, the phantom, the artist, the ghost who had executed the flawless Seoul Museum of Art, heist 3 years ago and vanished without a trace, leaving Interpol and a dozen private security firms chasing shadows. The heist that had funded this very life, that had bought my silence and my safety. My legs threatened to give way. I stumbled forward, my hand reaching out to the wall to steady myself. The web was a living, breathing entity. The red strings connected Jae-won to other photos, other names. There was Park Min-young, a corporate chameleon who had infiltrated a rival Japanese tech firm and stolen the blueprints for a revolutionary microchip 5 years ago. And there was Kang Soo-jin, the best document forger in East Asia, whose passports had smuggled 3 high-profile dissidents out of North Korea. All of them were me. Kijung, my sweet, older husband, the man who brought me tea in bed, wasn't having an affair. He was running an investigation, a painstaking, meticulous, and terrifyingly accurate investigation. His project was me. Every alias, every job, every ghost from my past was pinned to his wall, labeled, connected, and analyzed. He was an archaeologist of my lies, carefully brushing away the dust to reveal the monstrous skeleton beneath. He was peeling back my layers, one by one. And the evidence on that wall showed he was getting dangerously, terrifyingly close to the core truth I had buried at the very center of my being. The reason I had become a ghost in the first place. The creak of the warehouse door opening behind me was the sound of a world ending. I spun around, my body moving on pure, conditioned instinct, falling into a defensive stance I hadn't needed in 1,000 days. It was Kijung. He stood there, silhouetted in the gray light of the open door. He wasn't holding flowers or golf clubs. In his hand was a sleek, black pistol, held not with menace, but with a profound, earth-shattering sadness that was worse than any anger. His eyes, the eyes I loved, scanned the warehouse, the wall of my crimes, and finally settled on me. "I had a feeling it was you, Jae-won," he said, his voice steady, but his eyes were a storm of betrayal and confusion. The tracker was a clever touch, a classic Song Jae-won move, but not quite clever enough. He took a slow, deliberate step into the cavernous space, the door groaning shut behind him, plunging us back into the dim, evidence-lit gloom. "The question is," he continued, his gaze piercing through the persona of Hana, searching for the woman beneath, "which one of you am I speaking to right now?" The air in that warehouse was so thick with the weight of our lies, you could have carved it with a knife. Kijung stood there, a gun in his hand and a universe of hurt in his eyes. And I, Hana, or the woman who used to be her, stood frozen between my 3 ghosts. "Put the gun down, Kijung SSI, I said, my voice shedding the soft, melodic tones of his wife. It became flat, cool, and professional, the voice of Song Jae-won. "I don't think I will, Jae-won SSI, he replied, taking another slow step forward. "Or should I call you Park Min-young, or Kang Soo-jin? You've been a very busy woman. It took me nearly 2 years just to connect the 3 of you." He gestured with the gun towards the monstrous wall of evidence. The art heist, the corporate espionage, the forgeries, brilliant work, flawless even, but you always left one tiny, deliberate thread, a signature. My blood, already cold, turned to ice. He had seen it. The calling card I'd left on every job, a secret screw you to the world that thought it could cage me, a tiny, hidden doodle of a four-leaf clover etched into a forged document, reflected in a security camera during the heist, hidden in the code of the stolen blueprints. He had connected them all. Why? I asked, my mind racing through escape vectors and disarmament techniques. Are you NIS, private security? Who do you work for? He let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. No, I'm a husband. I'm the fool who fell in love with a phantom and spent 3 years trying to find the woman I married. He began to walk along the wall, tracing the red string with his free hand, his footsteps echoing in the vast, hollow space. When I met you, Hana, you were a miracle. A beautiful, lost soul with no past. I gave you everything. A name, a home, a life. And I never asked a single question. I was just grateful. He stopped at a photo of Kang Soo-jin, the forger. Until 6 months ago. He turned to face me, his expression raw. A man from my past, from my days in military intelligence, found me. He was dying, pancreatic cancer. He said a forger named Kang Soo-jin had saved his daughter's life, getting her out of the north a decade ago. He begged me to find her, to give her this. From the inner pocket of his coat, he pulled not a weapon, but a small, exquisitely carved jade butterfly hairpin. It glimmered in the dim light. He said to tell her, the nightingale is finally free. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. The North Korean dissident. The father I was certain had been executed in a labor camp. The code phrase I'd waited half my life to hear, the signal that the last loose thread of my most dangerous mission had been tied. I had given up hope of ever hearing it. The project wasn't to expose me. It was to find me, to find the right me to give this message to. He had unraveled my secrets not to destroy me, but to fulfill a dying man's last wish and to finally, truly know the woman he had vowed to spend his life with. Tears I could no longer control, real tears this time, not the single, calculated one from before, welled in my eyes and streamed down my face. The gun in his hand wasn't a threat to my life. It was a shield for his own shattered heart. He was terrified of the woman he'd discovered. I am all of them, I whispered, the hard shell of Song Jae-won cracking, leaving only raw, exposed Hana. Jae-won stole to fund the dissident network. Min-young stole the tech to keep it from a regime that would have turned it into a weapon. Soo-jin created the identities to save people. I wasn't just a criminal. I was a fixer, a ghost for hire, but only for the right cause. I looked at the jade butterfly, a symbol of a promise made a lifetime ago. The man you spoke of, his daughter was the first life I ever saved. It's why I started all of this. It's why I became a ghost. Kijung's arms slowly lowered, the gun pointing at the concrete floor. The anger and suspicion on his face crumbled, replaced by a dawning, overwhelming understanding. He had been hunting a monster and found a savior. He had been tracking a liar and found a woman of unimaginable, fractured honor. He walked to me and placed the cool, smooth jade butterfly in my trembling hand. His fingers brushed against mine, and the touch was electric, familiar and foreign all at once. Then the project is complete, he said, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. The debt is paid. The nightingale is free. He looked at me, truly looked at me, not as Hana the wife or Song Jae-won the thief, but as the whole, complicated, magnificent sum of my parts. And in his eyes, I didn't see revulsion. I saw reverence. But now I have a new problem, my love, he said, his gaze shifting to the computer terminal humming in the corner. He walked to it and pulled up a new, heavily encrypted file. With a few keystrokes, he broke the encryption. The header that flashed onto the screen was stark and terrifying. Operation, Phoenix, status, terminate. On the screen was a recent, crystal-clear photograph of the two of us, laughing, leaving our favorite Samgyeopsal restaurant. We were both circled in red. He knows I found you, Kijung said softly, his voice grim. Director Park, my former superior from the agency, a man who sees assets, not people. He was funding my investigation, thinking I was bringing in a valuable rogue operative. He knows I've closed the case. He turned to me, his face ashen. "And he's not coming to give you a job offer. He's coming to tie up a loose end. Both of us." Dear friend, there is no force in heaven or on earth more dangerous than a good woman who has been cornered. And I had been cornered my entire life, by my past, by my secrets, by my very nature. But now, for the first time, I wasn't standing alone in the corner. I was standing back to back with my husband. The hunter and the hunted had become a single, united front. The man coming for us was Director Park, a man with the cold eyes of a shark and the morals of a black hole. He saw my skills not as a testament to a life of survival, but as a tool to be acquired or a threat to be eliminated. We had 48 hours. We couldn't run. He had the resources to find any identity I could create. We had to stand and fight. And to fight, we had to use the very thing that had torn us apart, the truth. And so, the most unlikely of teams was forged. Kijung, the methodical strategist with his deep web of contacts and legitimate resources. And me, Hana, the brilliant, unpredictable phantom, with all my skills and aliases now out in the open, no longer a secret to be kept, but a weapon to be wielded. I was no longer just one woman. I was a symphony. Song Jaewon planned the counter-operation, a masterpiece of misdirection and audacity. Park Min-young hacked into Director Park's secure, air-gapped servers, planting false data, and creating a digital ghost trail that led his entire team on a wild goose chase to Busan. Kang Soo-jin forged the documents that would become his tombstone, evidence of embezzlement, treason, and black ops so damning it would make him a target of his own government. The finale was set at the place where my life as a ghost had effectively begun, the Seoul Museum of Art. Director Park had arranged a meet, believing he had us cornered, that he held all the cards. He was wrong. He only held the cards we had dealt him. That night I didn't wear a wire. I wore a dress of deep, liquid black, and in my hair I placed the jade butterfly. I was no longer hiding. I was making a statement. I was all of us, and I was done running. Kijung, watching from a surveillance van a block away, his voice a calm, steady presence in my nearly invisible earpiece, said, "Remember, Jajia, he believes you are a scared wife trying to save her husband. Let him believe it, right up until the moment he shouldn't." Director Park was waiting in the grand hall, under the same vast skylight where Song Jaewon had stolen the White Dragon diamond 3 years prior. "Mrs. Lee," he said, a smug, condescending smile on his lips. "Or should I say, Song Jaewon, you've led my old friend on quite a chase. You've been very expensive." "He found what he was looking for," I said, layering my voice with the soft, meek tremor of the wife I used to be. "Please, we just want to disappear. We'll give you anything." He took the bait. He laid out his demands, my indefinite, uncompensated service to his Black Ops division, or Kijung's very public ruin and my life in a concrete box. As he spoke, my eyes, seemingly downcast and frightened, were tracking the reflections in the glass display cases, monitoring the positions of his 2 hidden snipers. I saw the signal, a brief flicker of the museum's lights. Min-young had done her job. The data was public. I looked up, and the meek wife was gone. In her place stood the full, terrifying force of the woman who had outsmarted a dozen governments. "Director Park," I said, my voice ringing clear and sharp in the cavernous hall, "you made one fatal mistake." "And what is that?" he sneered, his hand moving instinctively towards the gun under his jacket. "You thought my husband was investigating me," I smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression that made him pause. "He wasn't. He was recruiting me, and our first joint operation is you." On his phone, which lay on the bench between us, a dozen news alerts blared simultaneously. Every major outlet in the country was running a story with his name, his face, and the forged evidence we had crafted. He was exposed. Finished. His face contorted in pure, unadulterated fury. He moved fast, drawing his weapon. But he was an administrator, a man who gave orders. I was a woman who executed them. I moved with the fluid, brutal grace of Song Jaewon. It was over in 3 heartbeats. A disarm, a pressure point strike, a leg sweep. He was on the cold marble floor, gasping, disarmed, as the distant, beautiful sound of sirens grew louder. I knelt beside him, whispering the last words he would ever hear from me. "The ghost sends her regards." I walked out of the museum into the embrace of the night, where Kijung was waiting, having left the van. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what happened. He just opened his arms and I walked into them. The hunter and the fox, the husband and the ghost, finally a single, unbreakable unit. We didn't have to disappear. We had won the right to stay. Hana Lee, formerly Song Jaiwon, Park Min-young, and Kang Soo-jin, was now a highly paid, utterly discreet consultant for a coalition of governments who needed problems to disappear. My past wasn't a shameful secret. It was my greatest qualification, and Kijung was my partner, the architect of our strategies. My darlings, I had spent a lifetime building walls between my identities, thinking each one was a separate cage. It took a man who loved every version of me and a tiny, blinking tracker to show me that the walls were an illusion. The most powerful identity isn't a single name. It is the sum of all your parts, the integration of every skill, every scar, every secret, finally and gloriously whole.